Welcome, today's story is full of drama. Like and subscribe to stay updated. Let's get started.
It was mid-morning on a Thursday, and I was already counting down the hours until I could leave the office. Not that inside sales is completely dull, mind you, it is, but it still doesn't quite measure up to golf or, let's be honest, sex. If it were up to me, my life would pretty much revolve around those two activities. But that's just a fantasy, isn't it? Anyway, let me give you a bit of background on me. I'm Ryan Carter. I guess I'm your typical guy, though a bit on the shorter side. I'm 56 and weigh around 170 pounds, with a 36-inch waist. I don't have the kind of physique that causes women to swoon, but I like to think they wouldn't run the other way either. I'm 47 years old, with mostly dark hair but enough gray to remind me I'm not getting any younger. My eyes are probably my best feature. They're blue, though I've had a few friends and family members argue that they look gray at times. My wife, Olivia, and I have been married for 19 years. She's 45, and I still find her incredibly attractive. Olivia is the type of woman who catches the eye of a lot of men, though not necessarily every man. For me, there's just something about her that drives me wild. She's 5 feet 7 inches, and while she won't tell me her exact weight, I guess she's around 145 pounds. Not exactly what some might consider thin, but she's still stunning to me. I absolutely love watching the way her hips move when she walks. And let's not forget her legs. After years of careful, albeit unofficial, observation, I consider myself something of an expert on women's legs. Her hair is still mostly light brown, though I haven't seen the exact color in 3 or 4 years. She swears her colorist uses the same shade as her natural hair, so I'll take her word for it. Olivia and I met when I first moved to Rivorton and decided to look at an apartment in a complex she managed at the time. She was attractive enough to catch my eye, but not initially so much that I was tongue-tied or anything. I guess that turned out to be in my favor because her personality very quickly started to make up for whatever little was necessary to give her a wow factor, and I was able to be relatively smooth. I admit it was a little easier since we had built-in business to discuss, which allowed us to get acquainted with no pressure. She was very friendly, as I knew she had to be with prospective new tenants, but I assumed she wasn't required to ask me to join her for coffee after I signed the lease, which she did. Again, she could have simply been being friendly, but I allowed myself to think maybe she had some interest. It happened to be late afternoon as we wrapped up the paperwork, so she knocked off about 15 minutes early, and we went to continue talking and drink a latte. By the way, in case you're wondering, I truly did like the apartment and thought the monthly rent was competitive as well. We had a great discussion. I learned that Olivia had worked in retail for a few years after graduating from high school, but decided after a couple of years that she wanted to better herself. So she started going to school again and eventually graduated with a BA in marketing. She still didn't know what she wanted for a career at that time, but she thought that marketing would give her a better chance in most kinds of businesses to pursue a lot of different career options. She definitely wanted to get out of retail at a minimum. She enjoyed the work and the interaction with customers, but hated the number of weekend and evening hours she had to work. Though it had never been a consideration, she noticed an ad on a job site for a leasing agent/property manager at a large apartment complex and was intrigued. She thought it would be a more professional position and still give her the chance to interact with customers while also providing more normal hours. She had been there about 18 months when we met and was really enjoying it. I gave her my story. I had graduated from a small private college in the Midwest at the age of 22 with a business administration degree. Much like her, I didn't know enough about what I wanted to do for a career while I was still in school to focus on the things that would have allowed me to make myself more competitive. As a result, I bounced from one entry-level job to another for a few years before I finally figured out a couple of things about myself. First, I didn't enjoy being responsible for the performance of other people. I learned that through a couple of junior supervisory positions, such as night parking manager of a hotel in the city where I lived at the time. Second, though I enjoyed the competitiveness of sales, the fact that I had to consciously make myself think about smiling, even when I was in a good mood, made it more of a challenge for me to develop a quick rapport when meeting people in person for the first time. Obviously, that makes things tough in outside sales. Through a fair amount of self-analysis and exploring a few less-than-ideal career paths, I finally figured out that inside sales works very well for me. I was still able to enjoy the competitive aspect of sales in general and got to capitalize on a good speaking voice. However, I wasn't hindered by those aspects of myself that would make working in outside sales more of a challenge. It was interesting. I found myself smiling very easily around Olivia without having to think about it. When it finally occurred to me to look at my watch, I found that we had been there for hours. "Olivia, They'll be glad to stay and keep talking as long as you're interested, but I want to be sensitive to your schedule as well. Should we call it an evening? I assume it goes without saying that we'll get together again very soon, right? I've always heard that ladies appreciate confidence, so I figured, what the heck? Pretty sure of yourself there, aren't you, Ryan? She said with a laugh. Okay. Give me a call at the office when you're almost done moving your stuff into your apartment, and maybe I'll bring pizza and beer over. Okay. I don't think we're quite to the stage of me helping you move just yet. I laughed and told her that it was a deal. I walked her out to her car and wondered about a kiss. In the end, I opted to avoid creating any chance of awkwardness by being very proactive about not kissing, or maybe I should say trying to kiss her. As I opened her door, I said, I hope you'll just be satisfied with the captivating conversation this evening. So many women view me as just a body, and it really does get tiresome after a while. That was a great move, as it turned out, because it got a very hearty laugh out of her as she got into the car. I found out later that she really appreciated my effort to make that moment as easy as it could have been. I decided, for once in my life, to just allow things to play out. I was interested in seeing Olivia again and hoped she was interested in me, but I didn't allow her to consume my thoughts, and certainly not my schedule. As I was new in town and starting a new job, I threw myself into learning all about my company's products and those of our competitors. We were an industrial supply company, so there were a lot of products, but none required much effort on my part. All our products were really more of a commodity. Our real product, from a sales perspective, was our service. Specifically, we managed inventory levels on behalf of our customers in such a way that we could maximize either their level of inventory or their order quantities, depending on whether they derived greater value from a little better price or from the savings of keeping inventory levels as low as possible without risking running out of important items. I guess I was lucky enough to be one of the few to come to the realization of what our real competitive advantage was, because I became our company's top producer after about 18 months or so. However, enough about work. You probably care more about how things progressed with Olivia. As I alluded to before, I was Mr. Cool with Olivia. I found a legitimate excuse to drop by the office a couple of days later, told her how much I enjoyed our discussion, and would welcome the chance to do it again, but I didn't make an attempt to set up anything specific. I wanted to make sure she was interested. A week or so later, she dropped by my place just before leaving work on a Sunday afternoon. Saturday and Sunday were two of her busy days, so she had Monday and Tuesday off. She wanted to make sure I knew about the apartment complex's mixer at the pool the following weekend. Since she could have easily called and the entire complex was plastered with flyers promoting the mixer, I figured I could take that as a sign she was interested in getting together again. Thus started our relationship, which, in many ways, was a textbook example of how they say a couple should begin a romance. Though we were both clearly interested in one another on a romantic level, we took things slow. To be honest, the teasing, if I may call it that, was kind of fun. We would see each other once every couple of weeks or so. I was definitely excited to see her again the next time, and I like to think she felt the same way. We would also talk on the phone once or twice a week. Most of the time we spent together was very casual. Both of us were what might be called homebuddies, though I hate that term. We would enjoy sitting together and watching one of our favorite reality TV shows every bit as much as many would enjoy going out for a nice dinner and dancing. She seemed to get my dry and sarcastic sense of humor, which was a bonus. As I mentioned before, we also had a great time not getting physical for quite some time in the beginning. Now, let's not get carried away. I would never want to go back to that, but at that time and for a while it was cool. And I always thought it kind of defined us as a couple to some extent. We had sort of a game of one-upmanship on comments in the vein of the one I described earlier, me just being a body, about which I was so proud. Gradually, our time together became more and more frequent until we were spending several evenings or lunches a week together. The fun we had in not getting physical, even though the chemistry definitely seemed to be there, started to feel almost awkward. I guess we had gone along in that manner for so long that neither of us knew how to break the cycle. That all ended one day when we had taken Olivia's dog, Bella, to the dog park. No one was sure what breed Bella was, but the ever-popular term lab mix was bandied about quite often when the subject was discussed. We were on our way back to the car from the fenced play area, and I guess I must have stepped on a loose rock or something and fell. Of course, being me, I made it look as silly as could possibly have been done. Olivia started laughing hysterically, and Bella came over and started licking my face, or, in dog lovers' parlance, giving me kisses. "That must be the first kiss you've had in months?" Olivia exclaimed as she laughed so hard she nearly came to tears. "Well, if I can't get it from you, I guess I may as well get it from Bella." As soon as that comment was out of my mouth, I panicked. It just came out without me thinking, and there were a number of ways Olivia could choose to react to it. I was obviously hoping for a light-hearted banter type of response. I was definitely very surprised by what she did. She dropped to her knees and then straddled me. She may have made a comment about not knowing that I had been waiting for her, but I'm not sure. Regardless, she immediately covered my mouth with hers and proceeded to give me what was the hottest kiss I'd ever had in my life. Remember when you were young and the smallest touch or gesture could send your heart racing and make you feel overwhelmed? That's kind of what it felt like. After such a long period of emotional restraint, if that's the right word, since it was self-imposed, her touch was both eager and tender at the same time. At that point, I was far beyond the age where a simple kiss would have the same effect, but I couldn't deny that the intensity was still there. It was clear that we needed to leave soon, as things were escalating quickly, and we couldn't continue in a public setting without drawing unwanted attention. So we decided to head to her place, where we could fully focus on each other. Pick your cliché, fireworks, chemistry, whatever. The time we spent together the remainder of that afternoon, evening, and night exceeded anything I could adequately describe, as I'm sure is rather obvious. Our move into a physical relationship was the catalyst that propelled us to being husband and wife in every way other than legally. We were seldom apart unless one of us was working, or I was golfing. I even tried to get her to golf with me at least part of the time, but she was having none of it, citing that as my cave time. I was incredibly happy, and she indicated that she was as well. Though I had no particular need to get married, I couldn't imagine ever wanting anyone else. So a few months later, I popped the question at the same time as the protagonist was doing so in the currently airing version of The Bachelor. Not very romantic, you might think, but it was very romantic for us, simply because it was very us. Olivia laughed until she cried, or maybe it was the other way around. But as soon as she could catch a breath, she said, "Not that you don't already know, but I guess I owe you an official yes." Of course, that made me very happy. As it seems marriages tend to go, ours was very fun and exciting initially and eventually settled into what I would describe as more pleasant and comfortable. Olivia and I enjoyed many of the same things but also had our individual interests. Sure, we thought about kids but just never felt it was the right time. Initially, we were just enjoying one another too much to add to the mix. Thereafter, I guess it was simply a matter of inertia. We continued to have what I would term a realistically vibrant sex life. We went through the typical, I assume, progression of 2+ times a day to 2 to 4 times a week to several times a month. That was fine with me. I was now 46, and my libido wasn't what it used to be. I still very much enjoyed our intimate time together but didn't need it constantly like I used to, and I think Olivia felt the same way. We experimented with a variety of positions, role-playing, dirty talk, etc. early on as well. It was a lot of fun to experiment, but we found that the more basic positions and activities were as enjoyable for us as those that might be regarded as more wild or exciting. I guess it was probably about 2 years ago that Olivia began to change somewhat. It was so gradual and subtle that I didn't even notice it at the time. She was less interested in sex and seldom dressed in a manner that would invite my attention around the house. That was pretty normal after a number of years of marriage, right? Interestingly, at the same time, she dressed even nicer for work. She almost always wore sexy heels, and while she used to wear skirts only on occasion, she wore them pretty much all the time now. I asked her about it, and she said that her role required a sharper image. By this time, she had been promoted to regional manager of her property management company and was regarded quite highly within her organization. As I had mentioned previously, Olivia had become less and less interested in our sexual relationship, and I found that even though my libido was fairly diminished in recent years, I still wanted more than I was getting. I had taken to reading web stories in the last several months in order to keep myself sexually satisfied. At that time, I was reading stories where the sex was very graphically described, and any cheating that may happen was found to be exciting by any and all concerned. One day, I was reading a story and just getting ready to take care of business, which I only did at times when Olivia had a late meeting or entertained business contacts over dinner, when something hit me about the story I was reading. It was told from the woman's point of view. The protagonist's name was Lisa. She was from a town just a few hours' drive from us. She had been married to her husband, David, for 2 years less than we had been. Lisa was the CEO of a property management company, and David was a sales support representative for an industrial supply company. Lisa was 59 and weighed 130 pounds, with gorgeous dark hair and blue eyes. David was 55 and weighed 190 pounds, with graying and thinning hair. You see where this is going, right? The gist of the story was that David had certain insecurities about his relationship with Lisa, and that dissatisfaction had caused some tension. By this time, it was clear that I, too, had lost any interest in anything beyond the comfort and warmth of my own personal space. Neither of us found any enjoyment in reading about humiliation or belittlement in stories. Despite David's insecurities, Lisa loved him and remained committed. However, understanding what turned David on, she occasionally brought other men into their home while David was out working or fishing. David knew about this arrangement, but it was never openly discussed. At this point, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story was oddly similar to our own situation. I wasn't sure if Olivia had read the story, wrote it herself, or if one of her previous partners had written it, but it left me wondering. I decided to call in sick to work and take the requisite trip to an electronics store to buy all the voice-activated recording devices and movement-activated cameras. I thought those things were just literary conveniences, but it turns out they really do have them, at least for the purposes of my story. Turns out we didn't have a lot of places to hide those kinds of things, but eventually, I found enough spots to put the microphones and cameras that I felt like I had most of the critical areas covered. As you may have guessed, it was tough to try to act normal around Olivia for the next few days, but I made the effort. I'd really feel stupid if my suspicions were incorrect. Even if they were, however, recent events were enough to convince me that Olivia and I needed to have a frank discussion about the physical aspect of our relationship. Maybe I had been assuming too much. We certainly communicated very openly and honestly about everything else, and I figured she would let me know if she weren't happy with how things were going in the bedroom. Now that I think about it, I guess I hadn't necessarily been happy about things and hadn't raised the issue with her. Now back to where we started. I was looking forward to heading out of the office at 3 this afternoon to go fishing. Read Thursday Skins game. This was my first real chance to find out if I was simply paranoid or if the similarities in the aforementioned story were, in fact, more than a coincidence. Finally, 3 came and I was out the door in a flash. Needless to say, it was a handicap maintenance day for me. I shot a 97, not a good round for a 13 handicap, but who could blame me? I wasn't exactly thinking about golf. When I got home, it was business as usual. She asked about my round. I told her that I played like crap. Any real golfer never plays well, right? We went through the motions, which I now understood we had been going through for a couple of years. For my part, I could think of little else aside from checking my monitoring devices. I finally got my chance on Saturday afternoon when Olivia went to the mall. Or maybe she went to the mall. At this point, I really didn't care. Yes, it was getting harder and harder to wait for the evidence rather than just confront her. Let's face it, what was going to happen when I did, especially with just suspicions? Exactly. She would either deny it, or she would simply tell me I was correct and that she wasn't sorry or interested in trying to make amends. Neither of those were good options, in my opinion. At least if I could get some proof, I could have some righteous indignation. Hey, small victories sometimes. Well, it was as bad as my worst mental images, I'm afraid. I didn't know the guy, and frankly, I didn't care. Right, I know I'm supposed to want to punch him out. But he didn't know me and didn't know me anything. Olivia, on the other hand, did. Nothing much, of course, just some little thing about forsaking all others and some respect. 2 things really hurt me about what I saw and heard. First, I noticed how much more impressive the guy was in certain ways. I had always considered myself pretty average, but I never realized Olivia had any concerns. I guess I was naive to believe all that reassuring advice people often give. Like, it's not about looks, it's about how you connect. That idea felt hollow in the moment. Additionally, Olivia was being extremely vocal with him, complimenting him in ways that felt completely unfamiliar to me. The emotional weight of it was overwhelming. Like the time I lost my job unexpectedly, but this felt 10 times worse. It was like the very life had been drained from me. I'll admit it. Sitting there at my desk, I broke down and cried for what felt like hours. What was I supposed to do now? One thing was for sure, I had to get away until I could collect my thoughts. I couldn't face Olivia, and for sure I couldn't pretend everything was okay with us. Damn, how did I even know she had an interest in things being okay with us? I guess that thought, even crossing my mind, was arrogant. If she didn't care enough about me to be faithful, why would I think she cared enough about me to stay together? My time with Daniel had been enjoyable that afternoon. To be honest, the initial excitement was starting to fade a little, but I was still looking forward to a relaxing evening with Ryan, including dinner and maybe some quiet time together. Lately, though, Ryan seemed to be in a bit of a strange mood. He usually came home from golf around 7, so I started to wonder where he was when he still hadn't returned by 8. He hadn't left a message, so I called him, but it went straight to voicemail. That was unusual, as he rarely had his phone turned off. Not knowing what else to try, I went upstairs and noticed a lot of Ryan's things missing from the top of his dresser. I checked the bathroom and, again, noticed a lot of his toiletry items were gone. Growing concerned, I checked his closet and found a lot of his clothes missing. Now I was panicking. It was just then that I noticed his wedding ring sitting on my dresser, looking very lonely and quiet, yet speaking volumes. How could he possibly know? Now that I thought about it, it never even occurred to me that he might find out or what might happen if he did. I know that seems hard to believe, but it's true. Or maybe, more likely, I had long since quit thinking about such things, or feeling guilty about what I was doing. I thought back to how it started with Daniel. He was also married but took a lot of interest in me, and it was so flattering. Ryan never gave me a reason to feel the need to find attention elsewhere, but still, having someone new and different show interest and be attracted to me was incredible. When Daniel finally managed to get me to spend time with him, I have to admit, it was beyond anything I had experienced before. I had always been content with Ryan, but as I mentioned earlier, Daniel's presence felt like a whole new level of connection. Over the past couple of years, I've noticed that my interest in being with Ryan has faded, largely because of what I had with Daniel. It's only now that I'm realizing how much that has impacted things. I left Ryan several voicemails, but it was clear he had no intention of returning my calls. I had no way of knowing where he was or what he was doing. Would he decide to divorce me? And honestly, did I even care anymore? Not that it would end up being my choice, but I'd better figure out what I wanted. If I wanted Ryan, I had to figure out how to get him to have an interest in keeping me. Ryan wasn't the yelling and screaming type, but this may put that to the test. I finally went to bed about the time it was getting light outside. I don't know if I slept or not. I know that entire weekend was nothing more than a nightmare, in which I felt like I had a lead ball in my stomach. Daniel tried to call me a couple of times, but I ignored his calls. I went back to work on Monday but sleepwalked through my responsibilities. Tuesday, too, for that matter. Finally, on Wednesday evening, Ryan called. The phone call, Ryan. I guess you found out. Olivia. I'm so sorry. So very sorry. I didn't want you to find out this way. Hell, I don't even know how you found out. Ryan, well, I guess we've established one thing. You're not even sorry you did it. You're just sorry you got caught. Olivia. That's not what I mean, Ryan. Ryan. I would argue that that's exactly what you meant. Tell me about why you did this. What was missing in our relationship? And why wasn't I able to satisfy you in the bedroom, Olivia? Then we may have something more to discuss. Assuming you have any interest in any discussions. Would you rather just get a divorce? Olivia. No. I can't honestly say I can give you a good answer for any of those questions right now, except for one. I definitely don't want a divorce. Ryan, well, call me when, and only when, you can answer those questions. Then we may be able to figure out whether there is still an us and what to do about it. Olivia, okay, Ryan. I will. And thank you for being willing to talk. Ryan, as I had mentioned, wasn't normally a fly-off-the-handle kind of guy, but I was still very surprised by how well he was taking this. It sounded like there still may be a chance for us. The discussion, of course, proved that I was woefully unprepared to answer the hard questions to which he was entitled to answers. I decided to call in sick the next day so that I wouldn't be distracted by work issues and take time to think through these things. My feelings were in a muddle. I was feeling very guilty, of course. For some reason, however, and I really hate to admit this, I was feeling sorry for myself for having been caught, and for the potential of losing Daniel. Trust me when I say, I know that won't get me any sympathy with anyone. But since I've been caught, I may as well be honest. I sat at the kitchen table with a notepad. I don't know why, but it seemed like a good idea to have one at the time, and a cup of coffee. I thought through the questions Ryan posed to me. I guess it must have been hours because I drank most of a pot of coffee and then smelled something burning that turned out to be the little bit left in the bottom of the pot. Burnt to the point that I would likely have to throw the pot itself out. At the end of the day, I had to rely on Ryan's love and forgiveness. The truth was, this happened simply because I enjoyed the attention from someone else. I loved and appreciated Ryan's attention and care, but I had become somewhat accustomed to it. Though he was wonderful in every way, the reality was that the connection we once had didn't feel the same to me anymore. The attention I received from someone else had altered how I felt in my relationship with Ryan, and I felt deep regret for that. I cried again when I thought about it. Ryan didn't deserve to be in this situation. I spent the next day at work, and the weekend, thinking through what I should say to Ryan. I knew if I didn't reach out soon, there might be no point. But if I didn't have the right answers, would it even matter? Sunday afternoon, I finally called. Ryan didn't answer. I left him a message indicating that I wanted to talk when he was willing. About an hour and a half later, he called me back. Olivia, hi, Ryan. Ryan, thanks for calling me back. So, you're ready to talk? Olivia, I don't like some of my answers, but I'm as ready as I think I'll ever be. Ryan, how about lunch tomorrow? Go through a drive-thru and get what you want, then meet me at the park. Olivia, okay, Ryan. What time? Ryan, 12:30. Near the pond. See you then. He had already hung up. As I tried to sleep that night, I wrestled with what I'd tell Ryan. I had to admit that I wanted to have my cake and eat it too. If Daniel were single, would I feel differently? Probably. I had to admit, the sex with him was just so much better. Though it was getting less exciting recently, I'd have to figure out why and do something about it. Assuming I got the chance. By the time I fell asleep, I had a plan. It was a risky plan, to be sure, but at least it was something, and I guess that was better than nothing. Maybe it was Machiavellian of me, but I wore Ryan's favorite dress the next day. A blue dress that showed just a hint of the roundness of my breasts, and a skirt that showed the bottom part of my thighs. I knew Ryan had always loved my legs. Would you believe I also wore sexy underwear? I know, but hey, why were we in this position in the first place? I think I have proven that I don't always exactly think all that clearly. At the time, I figured it couldn't hurt. Ryan looked cold when he sat down beside me at 12:40. He was a few minutes late, but what could I say about it? I waited a minute and finally he spoke. Ryan, well, nothing like being made to feel comfortable with a tough discussion, right? Olivia, I know I deserved it, Ryan. I don't know where to begin. First of all, you've been the best husband any woman could hope for. I guess that makes all this even worse. I truly can't think of anything you've done or not done that caused this. I still don't know how you found out, and I guess that doesn't matter. But I never wanted to hurt you. That being said, I have to admit that my connection with Daniel has been fulfilling in ways that I hadn't expected. I don't want this to hurt you, but it's the truth. What we shared in the beginning was amazing, and for a long time it was great. It's just that with Daniel, I feel a different kind of connection. None of this is an excuse, of course. I know I don't want a divorce. I love you deeply, and I hope that's not hard to believe despite what I've shared. I truly value everything about our life together. I'm not dissatisfied with our relationship. It's just that there are aspects of it that don't fulfill me in the same way the rest of our life does. I understand you are likely not to want to do this, but would you consider us staying together while allowing me to continue my relationship with Daniel? My stomach was in knots as I waited what seemed like forever. What a stupid, selfish woman I was for asking this. Finally, Ryan responded. Ryan, I have to admit, I'm surprised. I'd have thought you'd tell me you wanted a divorce if that's how you feel about our sex life. If I consider this, how can I be convinced you truly do love me? I was stunned. I don't know what I expected, but this certainly was not it. I was fully prepared to hear that he would divorce me outright. I thought that there may also be a very remote chance he'd forgive me eventually, after insisting that Daniel couldn't be part of the equation. Never in a million years did I expect this, though. I finally responded, though I was completely unprepared to formulate anything very articulate. Olivia, I probably can't give you a good answer for that other than to say that if you give me the chance, you'll definitely feel loved and cherished. Ryan, I hardly feel loved and cherished now, Olivia. But then you probably don't care. Do you? Though that comment was fully deserved, it felt like Ryan had punched me in the face and stomach at the same time, as hard as he possibly could, and knocked me to the floor. The tears came immediately, and it was some time before I could respond. Just for the record, Ryan would absolutely never lay a hand on me in anger. He was way too much of a man to do that. Olivia, I don't know what to say, Ryan. I'll give Daniel up, if you tell me I have to. I assume you know his name? I still don't even know how you found out, and I guess it doesn't matter. I'm sure things with him will eventually fizzle out anyway. Ryan, okay. The fact that you're willing to give him up if I make you is enough for me for the time being. I won't make you do that, though. This was getting more and more surprising by the minute. My heart jumped, but I was afraid to get too excited. I was mostly happy that Ryan was apparently going to consider us staying together. But to be able to continue my relationship with Daniel? That was more than I had hoped for, even though I obviously came to this discussion asking for that very thing. Ryan, here is what is going to happen. You can accept it or we can divorce. Olivia, okay, Ryan. Anything. I promise you won't regret this. Ryan, make sure that I don't. First off, I won't be sharing the space with him. I guess I haven't really been sharing all that much with you lately, but I definitely won't be comfortable with things that cross that line. For as long as you choose to continue seeing him, I'll move downstairs. We've been meaning to finish the basement anyway, so I'll turn it into a bedroom and bathroom. Essentially, we'll live as roommates until you decide you're done with him. You're welcome to have him over, but please don't be overly affectionate in front of me. If that happens, it'll be the end for us. Does that work for you? The surprises just kept coming. I was overwhelmed with happiness, but also sad at the same time. What was the point of staying married if Ryan was going to move out of the bedroom? Maybe he would eventually change his mind about that. I had to hope. Olivia, of course you have every right to place whatever requirements on it you want, Ryan. I'm just so grateful you're staying with me at all. I hope eventually you'll decide you want to have a closer relationship again. Ryan, that's probably entirely up to you. And how you make me feel, Olivia. Ryan moved back in the next day and immediately called a contractor to work on the basement. Our 2 other bedrooms had already been made into an office and a workout room. I tried to get him to sleep in our bedroom, at least until the basement was finished, but he would have none of it. I tried to get him to let me take the couch, but he would have none of that either. That obviously really made me feel guilty, like I needed to feel more guilty. But then maybe that was the point. I gave it a few days and then called Daniel back. Daniel, what took you so long to call? Baby, why didn't you answer my calls? Olivia, he knows, Daniel. Daniel, what? How does he know? Olivia, does it matter? He knows. And he was very hurt, as you can understand. Daniel, yeah, I guess so. So, is it over? Olivia, you might think so. But no, he's fine with us keeping in touch. Daniel, are you kidding? What a pushover. I can't believe it. Olivia, Daniel, let me make one thing clear. Ryan is not a pushover. And if you call him that again, it will be the last time we speak. Do you understand? Daniel, all right, I get it. Calm down. Olivia, I just want to make that very clear up front. Anyway, he's fine with us seeing one another, but while we are, he and I will essentially be living as roommates. He's moving out of the bedroom and making a room for himself downstairs. Daniel, well, what do you care? You still get to stay married, and we can see one another too. Olivia, you're right, but I'm still wondering why. And frankly, I'm wondering why bother calling it a marriage. We made arrangements to meet the following day during lunch, but at a local motel rather than at my house. For some reason, I didn't want to bring him there yet. Interesting. I had permission now, but I wanted to be courteous about it. At least at first. My mind continued to churn. Why was Ryan reacting this way? It wasn't perfect, but it was still too good to be true. Ryan and I would see one another in passing in the evenings, and he was pleasant, even friendly, but I could have been a male drinking buddy. There was no intimacy at all, physical or otherwise. I made attempts to have more personal, not sexual, discussions with him, but he politely changed the subject. I was definitely starting to feel that part of me was missing. I met Daniel the next day, and the sex was just okay. I really can't pretend otherwise. I wish I could explain it or change it, but I couldn't. It was like all the excitement was gone now that Ryan knew. Was it just the deception that made it exciting before? Or was it starting to become clear that I needed love as well as lust? And the lust by itself just wasn't working for me anymore, now that I didn't feel like I had love. As I continued to think, it continued to very gradually become clear to me that I had what I thought I wanted. Now that I had it, though, it wasn't at all what I had expected it would be. Have you ever heard of a parent that shuts their kid in a closet and makes them smoke several cigarettes when they catch them smoking? I almost felt like that's what was happening to me in some ways. That just couldn't be how Ryan was thinking about it. Or could it? That would be a very elaborate form of revenge. I wondered why he didn't seem to need revenge. But maybe he was getting the ultimate revenge. On the way home, I stopped by the bank. I don't even remember why anymore, but I thought I'd ask for a printout while I was there, just to make sure my math was correct in the checkbook. I was stunned to find my balance seriously depleted. I checked our meager savings account too and found that half of that balance was gone. I asked about it and was told that Ryan had withdrawn half the balance of each a few days back. Now I was beginning to reel. I guess I was seeing just how serious all this was. I had to talk to Ryan about it when I got home. Olivia, Ryan, can we talk? I asked as soon as I walked through the door and saw him sitting on the couch watching his favorite college basketball team. He had a bird puppet with a big red head and yellow beak, sporting the letters KU on its blue body, in his hand. He was sitting forward, switching between concentrating and yelling at the TV. I couldn't help but wonder what made the Tigers so much worse than any other team. I might have thought it was cute if I wasn't so frustrated about us. He eventually became vaguely aware that I was there and paused the game. Don't we just love DVR? Ryan, what can I do for you, Olivia? Olivia. Ryan, why did you take half our money out of our checking and savings accounts? Ryan, well, I figured unless and until we ever have a real marriage again, it didn't make sense to share financial matters. Don't worry, there's a check for half of the mortgage and utilities on the end table. Olivia. That's not the point, Ryan. It's not the money, it's more distance between us. Ryan looked thoughtful for a moment and then spoke. Ryan, I don't get it, Olivia. You wanted to be able to play with other men but didn't want to give up anything in our relationship? Olivia. Remember, I said I'd give him up if you wanted me to. Ryan, that's not fair, Olivia. Olivia. Oh, so you weren't interested in doing it simply because it was the right thing to do or out of respect for me? Only if it was the only way for us to stay together? Ryan, well, when you put it like that, my God, this wasn't going like I wanted it to go at all. What was I going to do? I had really opened a can of worms here, and I was beginning to see that now. Ryan, Olivia, let me help you with something here. I agreed to stay married because I wasn't 100% sure that I had been as proactive as I should have been with communicating our needs and feelings with one another as the years passed. I didn't want to just leave, even though you cheated on us, without making sure I went more than my share of the distance to make our relationship vibrant and mutually fulfilling. Having said that, let me make one thing clear. I might not meet your expectations in every way, and I regret that, but it's who I am. I may not be able to spark the same feelings in you as I once did, but I still have my pride and self-respect, and I won't tolerate being disrespected. What do you think friends and family would think of me? What would my coworkers say if they knew you had someone else in your life and that I was aware of it, and was somehow expected to accept it? Sharing you while being left in the dark? Sorry, that's not something I'm willing to accept. Let me ask one more thing, though I haven't brought it up before. How long have you been seeing Daniel? Olivia. I haven't been with Daniel. Just seeing Daniel. Ryan, seeing whatever. How long? Ryan was getting angry now. The layers of what I had done to him were just beginning to surface, and I was growing more disillusioned with myself and my situation by the minute. I started to cry again. Olivia. Almost a year. This was followed by a long silence. Ryan, a year? Olivia, a year. Ryan, yes. Again, no point in lying now, was there? Ryan. So here's the deal, 1 year after you decide to stop seeing Daniel or anyone else, we can discuss whether we can or will become husband and wife in anything more than name. Now, if you don't mind, this game is important. Now the pieces were beginning to fall together. Now I was beginning to realize just how much of a fool I had been, and how badly I had hurt the man that I now understood I loved more than ever. I knew there was no point in pleading my case. Not only had I cheated on Ryan, but I had the arrogance, the lack of sensitivity, and the selfishness to ask him to keep on doing it, while also keeping all the things I liked best at the time about our marriage. God, I was starting to hate myself. A year was going to be a very long time that I guess another month or so wouldn't matter, would it? Maybe just 1 or 2 more times with Daniel, to be able to enjoy the memories. You guessed it, I called Daniel and met him again the next day. I'm clearly a poster child for self-destructive behavior, and yet I did it anyway. After spending another couple of hours with Daniel, I wanted to take steel wool and purge myself. It wasn't exciting. It didn't feel good. I felt dirty and cheap. I told him as I left to go back home that I wasn't ever interested in seeing or hearing from him again. To add insult to injury, he didn't really seem to care. I definitely hadn't wanted him to put up such an argument that it became awkward to end things between us, but I had at least hoped he would make some effort to talk me out of moving on. For the sake of my ego. This situation was getting better and better all the time. Surely Ryan couldn't have planned things to turn out this way. Could he? He couldn't know how I would start to feel. And that Daniel would ultimately dump me. Well, he may as well have, right? I told Ryan the next day that Daniel and I were through. I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I was hoping for him to be happy about it and to take me into his arms and for all to be forgiven. I know. He simply made a note on the calendar. Then he turned to me. Ryan. I'm glad to hear you've made that decision. You should understand, I don't believe you. And I don't believe you won't find someone else. You're going to have to prove to me that you haven't been with any other men for a year from now in order to get me back. I have no idea how you'll do that, but that's not my problem. Ryan started to walk away, then turned around. Ryan, oh, just so you're not surprised by it, I'll be having a guest over for dinner tomorrow night. So the final blow had arrived. This had to be the final blow, right? Hadn't I learned my lesson by now? Just to facilitate my self-pity, let me recap. After getting caught, I found that the sex with my lover immediately got boring. Started to miss the emotional intimacy of my marriage. Terribly. Became aware of how significant the non-sexual aspect of my physical relationship with my husband was, and now it was lost. Hated myself because of the guilt feelings I now had. Hurt badly as a result of the pain I had caused Ryan. Now could enjoy a sudden and overwhelming jealousy. Interesting how it never occurred to me that he might take an interest in someone else. Other than that, it had been a pretty good last few weeks. As I'm sure you may have guessed, Lauren, that was her name, was absolutely stunning. She was about 5 feet 3 inches. I'd guess her to weigh about 105 pounds. With fantastic legs, red hair, a smattering of freckles, and a C-cup. She worked in an adjacent office building to Ryan's, and they crossed paths in the connecting garage and security desk on occasion. They had brief discussions. Apparently, she had had something of a crush on Ryan for quite some time, but he wouldn't have anything to do with her beyond friendly discussion. Clearly, he now felt free to do so. They had been seeing one another for a couple of weeks now, and were already very comfortable together. She came over and Ryan grilled some steaks, which she complimented until she was blue in the face. I know all this, of course, because I was peeking out windows and around doors the whole time she was there. She left around 11. And I pretended to come out of my room for a drink of water. Olivia, she's pretty. Ryan, yes, she is. Thank you for saying so. Olivia, why did you have to bring her here? Was it to teach me a lesson? Ryan, I don't know what you're talking about, Olivia. You saw someone else for over a year behind my back. You're really going to be jealous about me seeing someone now that we have agreed we don't owe one another any fidelity? I don't get you. Olivia, I guess it's just that, well, I'm definitely seeing what a self-serving person I've been. I'd like to ask, no, I guess beg you to take me back. I mean, really take me back. Ryan, talk to me in a year, and we'll see, Olivia. I didn't think it was possible to cry any more tears, but I found a way. To make a long story at least a little bit shorter, I hung in there for the next year. I took an additional part-time job in order to be able to pay a surveillance expert to monitor everything I did through cameras and recording devices. Ironic, since I later found out that's how I had been caught. I had the report sent directly to Ryan. He never commented on them. He continued to be friendly to me, but his wall never crumbled. At all. He continued seeing Lauren. And though I made it a point not to subject myself to their time together after that first evening, I assumed they were very serious. It was the longest and certainly one of the most painful years of my life. I oscillated between self-pity because of how badly this was hurting me, and self-loathing because I knew I had hurt Ryan so badly, and deserved everything that was happening to me. Ryan was never blatantly mean, or never made any remark that would imply any of this was about revenge. I guess he felt he just needed this time in order to regain the dignity he felt he had lost. At the end of my year of purgatory, I approached Ryan. Olivia. Ryan, can we talk? Ryan, sure. Olivia. What's up? Olivia. Well, you may not remember, but it has been a year now. Ryan, yes. I was thinking that same thing. Olivia. So, can we discuss being husband and wife again? I think you would agree. I've done everything you've asked. In fact, and you may assume this, but I don't want to leave it to chance that you do. So I want you to know that I have spent much of the past year reflecting. I finally figured out what caused me to do it. I wish I had an answer that painted me in a different light, but it was very simply selfishness on my part. I wanted everything we had together, but also wanted the added excitement of something illicit on the side. It really wasn't about Daniel at all, nor was it about anything missing between us. I told myself in the beginning that I wasn't hurting you if you didn't find out. Now that I have had time to step back and think about it unemotionally, I'm ashamed of myself. I mean, I was ashamed at the time, of course, but clearly not enough to stop it. I want you to know, I'm prepared to do whatever you want to make things right between us. Ryan sighed and looked at me, Ryan, I'm pleased and impressed with your thoughts and insight, assuming it's genuine, of course. That being said, I need to let you know that Lauren and I have decided to get married. I felt like the world had collapsed around me. Ryan, I'm really sorry to hurt you, but now I do need to go ahead and get that divorce. He hesitated for a quick moment, and then walked away, collapsed on the floor and cried. What was left of my heart? Out.